It's like you go to bed and wake up. I mean, but they're starting to come to a conclusion. Like I mentioned this last night on the show. The Sphinx. The back of it. Well, I'm going to take a. You mind if we take a real quick call from Okay, let's take a call here. Yeah, who do we have here tonight? Hey, caller, who do we have?
Hello, it's Michael calling, Gary.
Well, hi, Michael. You have Gordon, our guest, on the other end. If you have some questions, go ahead and feel free to talk to him. I think this is really, it proved a point. He wrote the book in the mid-'70s, brought it out in 2016. It's now starting to get really popular. I just think Michael, he was just so far ahead of his time.
Well, it sure sounds like it. I've been listening and riveted to the telephone here, listening to you guys, and this story unfolding, which is just like an epic. It's almost biblical, I'm thinking. And I'm just wondering, what was Gordon's inspiration for this thing in the 70s? I know he was in Paris, and that's a romantic city, obviously. Was there something going on in his life at that point?
Hey, Gordon, can you hear him okay?
Yeah, I can hear. As I said earlier, actually, it was this desire to paint with words. And as I had moved away from London and from my studio and my painting, which on the one hand, okay, it was going and I was selling quite well, but it had got to a point where not much else could happen. Well, not much else could happen, but I wanted to have other experiences, and so when I was in Paris, I decided to do this painting with words and try and create the same kind of world that Joffre presented in his paintings, and so have this literary, metaphysical kind of literature, which would be a new genre, which it is, and so I just got into it, and the idea came to me. I can remember the idea coming to me. I was in the Vincennes Wood, which is on the east of Paris, and I was standing by a well, a spring, and it hit me. It hit me almost like a time capsule. Everything was there. All I had to do was unravel it, and it took me, I don't know, maybe 2 years to unravel it and write the whole thing. And then, of course, it just lay dormant until the right time, which when I started on it again, and which was like 4 years ago. So, so the thing is, yeah, it was anyway. It came from a desire to paint with words and to paint metaphysical, meta-realist story, which is as real as you need it to be. And then, everybody takes their own path, and everybody gets out of it what they're meant to be getting out of it, and there we are.
Wow. The whole story of your motivation for the book seems to remind me of the Woody Allen movie Midnight in Paris, where this modern day writer, novelist, goes to Paris and just kind of in the modern day, but seems to go back in time and meet the great artists and characters in Paris in the old days, Salvador Dali among the others, as you mentioned.
Yeah.
That would be interesting. Did you get the feeling when you were writing this book that there was certain downloads that were happening for you, or did you have a total outline from the beginning of what you wanted to do and where you wanted to go?
Well, it's a good question, because honestly, I have very, very few recollections of actually doing it. I can remember, as I say, that first moment in the Vincennes Wood, I can remember vaguely sitting there banging away on the typewriter and making sure the carbon paper in between the sheets wasn't getting screwed up. I can remember getting the letter from the publisher saying it's too ambitious for a first book. But I don't remember very much else. However, this being said, whether it came as a single sort of inspiration bite or not, in fact, not so long ago, when it was maybe just after I'd finished Genesis Antarctica, I actually had the idea for the sequel, and the sequel will be called Revelation Antarctica, and that was weird. It was weird, but it was inspiring. One morning I got up, and it was quite early. It was just getting light, and in the sky there was what was presumably Venus. But now Venus is a planet, so planets normally don't twinkle, do they? They're supposed to be steady. And on this particular morning, Venus was twinkling. And I looked at it, and I felt a sort of a whoosh. I mean, even now as I'm talking about it, I'm sort of tingling all over. And there was, it was like being delivered. It was as if UPS had said, you have mail. And there was this kind of idea pod which got embedded in me, and the whole story was there. The whole story of the sequel, which is just as complicated, if not more so, complicated, has many facets to it. It was all there, and all I had to do was write it down. And so far, I did get a bit sidetracked with the Penguin books, I must admit. But I mean, there are a good 20,000 words written of this sequel, and I've got the entire plan. And the entire plan came to me in literally 1 second, and I knew it was all there. And I just went down and wrote the entire plan of the book in about, I don't know, an hour and a half, which is still my guiding light for this sequel. So I would assume that the original book probably got delivered in the same way.
Oh, wow. Wow. I will say this, Michael, we're lucky because I think you had it, in your garage for quite a few years, basically on the shelf, forgetting about it. Thank God you didn't throw it away.
Oh, well, yes. Yeah. I could have thrown it away. There were several, as I say, it was, I probably moved house about 4 times or 5 times. Well, of course, first of all, I wrote it in France. Yeah, I just arrived in France. And at the time, I was living in a very small apartment, and that was one of the triggers as well, because I couldn't do any painting anyway if I wanted to. And so I started painting with the words, and it got hoiked around, from one house to another. But it is a minor miracle that it did survive, but it did.
Wow.
Gordon, you are a Paris resident there. Can you tell me about Shakespeare and Company, the bookstore that is so famous?
Yeah, okay. Well, I don't live in Paris now. I'm in the south of France, of course. I did live in Paris for, I don't know, 10 years, maybe more. Anyway, yeah, Shakespeare and Co. is right next to, right over the river from Notre Dame, and it is an iconic place. It's absolutely wonderful. The books there, they're quite happy if you just go in and sit down and read. Presumably they must sell a few, although they do, but there's a whole atmosphere about it which is absolutely unique.
Yes, and I understood it gave Ernest Hemingway his first published book. Oh, no, James Joyce as well.
Yes, I think that. Yeah, I'm not too well up on that, but yes, I believe I've heard that. Yes. Oh, it's been there for, it's not been there quite as long as Notre Dame, but it goes back a long, long way, and has indeed been a real landmark.
And I'll make one more point here before I leave you to your wonderful interview. Gordon, the whole idea of Antarctica is so timely right now, with all the paranormal activity that seems to be going on there, and the government agencies that are sending scientists down there on an ongoing basis. There was a major story, I think probably the last part of last year, about a group of scientists that went down to Antarctica and disappeared for 2 weeks for some reason. They ended up finding them, and or they came back from wherever they were, and they would not speak of their experience down there for some reason. It's a very mysterious place.
Yeah.
Well,
and of course, there's also the incredible story of John Kerry going there on election day, followed by the Russian Pope. The guy who. I mean, what were they doing down there? It absolutely reeks conspiracy theory and all the kind of things we love.
Well, I will say this, hey, Michael and Gordon, don't forget Admiral Byrd taking, his, back after World War II, taking a fleet and, taking aircraft carrier, taking ships, taking a whole bunch of troops. Supposedly a bunch of troops got killed. A ship, I think a minesweeper or whatever it is, got sunk. But they wouldn't talk about it. It was really strange. And, they talk about, Hitler had, underground base there during World War II. Maybe it survived after World War II. I mean, there's so much mystic what's going on about Antarctica. If you mention Antarctica, people just go, in the paranormal realm, just go crazy about it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, all they have to do is read Genesis Antarctica, and they'll discover the truth. Or it may or may not be the truth. But in a dimension very close. Yeah.
And, hey, Michael, before you take off, you need to get a copy of his book about the life reincarnation of little kids. He did a book or a series on that, and last time he was on my show, it was funny. I mean, I had these psychics and mystics come in afterwards, and even an ex-police detective, and, they talked about his book about reincarnation with children, like from 5 years old to about 7 years old, and when they seemed to get around 7 years old, they kind of forgot. Their past regressions, and it's interesting read. It's really, I think, educational for parents, especially with young kids, to have a copy of it.
Well, I sure will, and thank you very much for allowing me to ask a few questions there, Gordon. It's just a pleasure to meet you and to listen to your story.
Well, thank you. It's great to share as well, and it's fine.
Well, Michael, before you go off, why don't you tell everybody what you're going to be doing? Well, you're going to be with me on Saturday because we got that little special show going on. But why don't you tell everybody what you're going to be doing for the network starting on Sunday?
Well, I am just pleased as punch to be the news Sunday night host before Kevin Beagle's main show from 8 to 11. My paranormal show will begin at 7 to 8 p.m. Each Sunday night, and I'm looking forward to that. They don't call me the paranormal lawyer for nothing, so I've got some really great guests lined up.
Oh, great.
Hey, a paranormal lawyer, that's great. That's interesting.
Oh yeah, and he actually is a lawyer. So I mean, it's just not a nickname that he's called. So I mean, I'm really glad to have him on our network.
It sounds fascinating.
Well, Michael, you have a great evening, and you can text me later after the show.